Okay, a game there where Inverurie Locos undoubtedly started the brighter. Thought it was two good touches and finishes from Cole Anderson and Nathan Mears to have them 2-0 up. Alan McDonald obviously said if Jordan McRae's penalty had gone in, it might have been a slight injustice if it had been 2-1 only at the break. But Brora, I think towards the end of the second half, and then certainly in the second half itself, you saw them start to pass the ball in the way they can, and that's ultimately what got them back in the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it was the game of two halves, really. Brora hadn't played for a month, and as much as Ali McDonald was saying it wasn't an excuse, you could see that there was a lack of sharpness in the first half that took them a bit of time to rediscover, and Inverurie were the better side in the first half, scored a couple of really good goals. The second one, I mean, the celebration probably even topped the goal, but in terms of the turn and the finish for Nathan Mears, I thought it was really good, and Cole Anderson also thought he had a really good game on the day and breaking from midfield, took his goal really well. But Brora, I was always expecting a sort of response for Brora in the second half, and you always felt that next goal would be critical, and they got it, and they sort of cranked up the pressure, and I'm sure Jordan McRae had been pleased to get the equaliser after obviously the penalty miss, which you wouldn't normally expect from him. But it's funny because both sides probably left feeling that they could have won it, and slightly disappointed that they didn't, because I mean, Inverurie being 2-0 up, you'd hope to push on. Brora on the other side, they've had the penalty miss, and in the second half they did have some good chances as well, although in fairness, Inverurie on the counter-attack, I mean, the one that Miles Gaffney had ruled out for offside, we don't have the perfect view of the definitive angle, but it does look very, very tight, and on another day you maybe get those marginal decisions going for you and they come out with a win. Given where they are, I would say it's probably, in the rebuild they're sort of undertaken after the season they've had, it's probably a better point for Inverurie than it is for Brora, really. Brora now 15 points off the top of the table, but then they do have 4 games in hand, but they can still challenge and have a say at the top end, but they're going to have to put some run together, because there'll be a lot of Saturday, Wednesday weeks and playing in midweeks to come now, and that, it's tricky to sustain a challenge when you've got all those midweek games.
You talk about Brora there, remember they're in Scottish Cup action this weekend, so it's another game we're adding on top of their fixture backlog. But in terms of Locos, you're seeing now how different an animal they've become under Dean Donaldson. There's momentum, there's confidence, a bit of panache. When you look at the goals they scored as well, they're motoring and they're moving up this table quickly, and I expect that to continue in the weeks ahead. Just
the last thing I would add as well about Brora and potentially the schedule that they'll have, as we sit here just now, the weather for the week ahead doesn't look particularly great, and it's vitally important that Scottish Cup tie is on this weekend if they can get it on, because if that's postponed, the Scottish Cup tie takes precedence over anything else, so you then go Wednesday, Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, whatever, until it's played. So if we have this, it maybe when I quite come, but if we have this sustained spell of bad weather, that could make things worse for Brora, because they keep having to rearrange this cup tie before they can get more league games played, so I'm sure they'll be.
Okay, well, obviously it helps if you score almost immediately, but I thought it was a proper attacking display from Banks of D, overwhelmed Lossie at times, you could say. Some clinical finishing as well. Lachie McLeod's second in particular, that lofted sort of ball from outside the area over the goalie, lovely.
I think Banks of D, it was almost again like Brora. 16th of December was their last game before Saturday, and there's certainly no rustiness with them. I mean, it obviously helps when you get a goal in the sort of first 30 seconds or whatever, but I thought going forward is sometimes this season Paul Lawson and Josh Winton have maybe bemoaned not being quite clinical enough, but when it does click like it did on Saturday, they can do that to a lot of teams where they just can run away with it. But on the flip side, Frank McGettrick said afterwards Loss had gifted Banks of D goals, and he was spot on, really. I mean, the first one so early on, but failure to sort of clear your lines and things was a poor goal to lose. I mean, you can maybe pick faults in the second and third, but I won't. But then at the start of the second half at 3-1, it's that old thing. Next goal was going to be crucial, and the fourth one, really long throwing into the box, maybe a hint of a foul throw potentially with the player being on the pitch, but even still, Lossie should deal with it. And the fifth one, as good a finish as it is from Lachie McLeod, if he looks back at it, Cameron Farquhar, given that it was defenders here, would probably feel he should stay in his line. And the sixth one maybe summed up Lossie's day a wee bit, where two players go for it at the near post and end up heading it into their own net. So it's not really, I mean, they have had the odd bad defeat and things, but it's not really in keeping with Lossie's season overall. Like, they are usually quite well organised and obdurate, but clearly their defending on Saturday was not up to scratch. But Banks of D deserve a lot of credit because, as I said, they'd been out of action, but they took full advantage, and you couldn't really, aside for keeping a clean sheet, you couldn't ask for any more if you were a Banks of D supporter.
Yeah, keeping the pressure on at the top of the division. Let's move on to Saturday's other games. Then the first one discusses Huntly 2, Buckie Thistle 3. We earlier discussed Scottish Cup ties coming up this weekend. Graham Stewart, the Buckie manager, has a bit of a waiting game to play, doesn't he? Sent off, given a red card for entering the field of play against Huntly on Saturday in the aftermath of or during a melee which followed an Alexander Thoyer's challenge on Max Barry. And I suppose what he's waiting for is to find out whether he's got an immediate ban, which might mean he doesn't get to be in the dugout at Parkhead against Celtic, or is there going to be an SFA hearing which might delay the ban, or it might get overturned, I suppose.
Well, the thing is, as we sit here just now, we don't know. A lot will probably depend on referee Harry Bruce's report, because depending on what's in that probably preempts the sort of course of action the SFA will take. I mean, obviously Buckie will be hoping either no action, or if there's going to be a hearing next week, could probably be preferable. But it's one of those things. I mean, it seemed to be quite a fiery encounter. I mean, I haven't seen it, but from what I've heard about Saturday's game, it seemed to be quite a fiery encounter. But if Graham was going on to potentially calm things down, then you don't know. It might be okay. It's one of those hard to speculate as to what will happen at this stage, having not been there and seen it with my own eyes.
I'm smirking because I'm going, I don't think Graham was coming on to calm things down. I think he was annoyed at what was going on. He views better from the director's box in Celtic Park anyway.
I feel like I kind of know how Graham will be feeling though. It's like one of those situations where you're like, he's probably thinking, oh no,
what have I done?
With this game coming up at the weekend.
Anyway. In terms of on the pitch, how many times do we sit here and say it, but Buckie scoring a late goal to win again, they just don't stop. Like, I mean, Jack Murray, the report we had said 13. I would have had it in my tally that I keep is 12, but he's scored a lot of goals for a defender, and he's done it. I mean, Darryl McCarty got their first goal, but Jack Murray's got the winner. They have goals from all over the park, and they don't stop, and they always just seem to find a way. Like, you never look at the scores with like 5 minutes to go, and if Buckie are drawing or losing, you'd never go, well, that's them done for, because they just keep doing it time after time, and credit to them. For Huntly, it probably goes down in quite a long list now of games this season where they can take a lot of credit for their performance, but they haven't taken anything out of it, and that's the gap they're trying to bridge in terms of when they play the top sides. But that gap probably won't be easier to bridge now that they've lost like Michael Dangana to Elgin, which happened on Friday night, which is a blow to them, the form he's been in this season. But that's that's what you're up against. If players do well, they will attract interest. And I mean, Bucky, the other side, they managed to bring in Liam Harvey on Friday, who's left Aberdeen, been on loan at Elgin. He sort of seems like a good prospect for the future, certainly 18, and has that experience of the first half of the season at Elgin. And Bucky have been looking for a striker for a couple of months or a few months now, and it seems like from what Graham Stewart said, he's the person that will fit the bill for them.
Yeah, played in the Scottish Premiership as well. Just to sort of clarify the goals in that game, Angus Grant put Huntly ahead before Darryl McCarty scored equaliser in the first half. Max Barry then put Bucky ahead. Brodie Allen thought he'd got a point for Huntly late on, though, before Jack Murray, we've discussed him several times this season, he pops up to win it. Fraserburgh 2, Clatnacudden 2. Willie West Volley had Fraserburgh in front at the break in this one. Lewis McKenzie levelled after the interval. Sean Butcher was then sent off for the Broch. But despite Clack having chances, Fraserburgh got a pen on 81 minutes for handball, which Ryan Sargent hit the bar with. Logan Watt then did give them the league at 2-1 on 90 minutes, and you'd be thinking at that point, well, Fraserburgh have got this over the line here, only to concede a Dylan McKenzie header. 3 minutes later, 93 minutes, Clark getting a share of the spoils there. I suppose, looking at that game, the first thing I think is that's the kind of character that the Clark boss, Connor Gethins, was demanding of his players last week when they got beaten heavily by Turriff.
I would say so. I mean, it's been a tough old season for the Lily-Whites. So anything like this, I think you have to take as much out of as you can. And I know Fraserburgh are down to 10 men during the second half, but to go to Bellslea and get something from the game in the position that Clark have been in is a very good result. From a Fraserburgh point of view, for me it feels like if we're talking about Huntly being almost like the nearly men when it comes to the big head-to-heads, so many times they come away with plaudits but maybe no points. How many times have we been talking about Fraserburgh ruining a missed penalty? That seems to be a common theme, probably the last year, I would think.
It's one of them again, like a bit like the first game, like neither side, Clark probably in the circumstances happier of the two to get a point. Clearly in the Broch will feel it's 2 dropped, but like with 10 men, Clark, you maybe hope they can step on a wee bit. They did have chances, but I mean so did Fraserburgh. I think the first half as well at 1-0 Fraserburgh could have maybe extended their advantage, and obviously if the penalty goes in it's maybe a different thing. But I thought Mark Cowie's comments afterwards were interesting, that he feels they're losing too many goals, and probably the one at the end's maybe evidence of that a wee bit, whereas we've seen in other occasions when they've been that bit tighter they would probably see that game out, and it will. I think there's no question, even though they were down to 10, it'll feel like 2 dropped for the Broch. I have seen Sean Butcher's red card as well. I mean, there's no... It's an unfortunate collision really. Fergus Adams goes with his head, Sean Butcher sort of goes with his foot, and I mean there's no intent, I don't think, to hurt Fergus Adams, but when boot and head make contact and the linesman was about 2 yards away, I think there was only ever going to be one outcome, which was a red card.
Brecon City 3, Rothes 1 then. Brecon still clear at the top of the table. Ewan Loudon with a double. Murray McIntosh made it 3-0 in the second period, and then Jake Thompson or Greg Morrison with a late consolation for Rothes. Good victory for Brecon, this, just keeping things ticking along.
Aye, another game crossed off, and I mean, didn't seem like they had it all their own way. Rothes seemed to play well in the first half by all accounts, and then at 1-0 Sean McCarthy saved a Grady McGrath penalty which was keeping them in the game, but Brecon have sort of kicked on as they do. I mean, Ewan Loudon's a player, I think he had a few injury troubles at the start of the season, but in the last couple of months he seems to be becoming more and more influential, and you see that again on Saturday. And they have strengthened again. I mean, Murray McIntosh has been away for 18 months in Australia. He was with Brecon their first season in the Highland League. He's now back. He's a good, very experienced, played at a good level in the SPFL, back to strengthen them. They've signed a guy, Jamie Richardson, striker, on loan for Dundee as well, who I think got 17 goals in 23 games in the Midlands League for Dundee North End, and I know that is a level below, but you'd think somebody like that coming in can probably add to them as well. For Rothes, seems to be this dubiety about who got their goal, whether it was Jake Thompson or Greg Morrison, but I think they can take credit from their performance on Saturday, and I suppose we're still waiting to see what happens in terms of the managerial situation there, and I suppose players maybe playing with that wee bit of uncertainty as well in terms of who comes in next.
For Martin United 6, Keith 2, early Keith goal via Nathan McKeon in this one, and Stuart Anderson felt Keith were the better team. In the first half, 2 further goals chalked off, one for offside, one sounded a bit bizarre where the Formartine keeper Hugh McDonald threw the ball off the back of a Keith player.
Oh, for Mikey
and
Taylor.
It went into the net.
Sounds like maybe a wee hint if certain people remember the Alan Coombe, Darren Mackey goal from years ago. But
it was chalked off for some reason, a foul presumably. Don't know if it was a foul or it wasn't, haven't seen it. But Adam Emsley did level for Formartine midway through the first half, and then it was a bit of a blitz from United after the break. 4 Formartine goals in 17 second half minutes, including a debut hat-trick for Aaron Reid. Aidan Coombe scored after Reid's first goal, and Brodie Alberts made it 6-1 after that to Formartine before Keane Yates scored another goal for Keith in the dying embers to round it off at 6-2. Interesting, this one, slow start from Formartine, but you know, Aaron Reid reminding us all of how capable he is at Highland League level after some time away.
Very much so. I mean, he was terrific when he was at Turriff. I think he kind of struggled a wee bit in his loan spells at Elgin and Peterhead, but he's back in the Highland League and back among the goals, and he's in a team that's going to create a lot of chances for him. And as you can see, with a hat-trick in the space of 17 minutes, he's certainly going to enjoy this, I think.
Not a team that struggled to score goals already, to be fair.
No. He's still young as well, Aaron Reid. Like, I think people maybe think he's had a loan spell at Elgin last season and then Peterhead this season, that he's maybe struggled in the Scottish League. But I do think he's only 19. I do think he'll become a Scottish League player at some level in time, and maybe it hasn't quite happened for him just now, but he's clearly a very good signing for Formartine to have second half of the season. But it's a funny game at times because we haven't seen the 2 goals that Keith had chalked off, but if you get one of them, if on another day if one of them was to stand and it goes 2-0, could be a very different game. I mean, if you're Keith, I think you'd take a lot of the positives out of that first half, but then I mean, when the top teams play like Formartine did in that second half, it's maybe hard to stand up to, but you'd probably want, like Craig Ewan will be hoping going forward they can defend a bit better and maybe stand up to that. And I mean, the last thing I would say in that game as well is good to see Aidan Coombe getting on the score sheet as well, because he's, you know, reasonably well documented, but certainly had his fair share of injury problems the last couple of seasons, so I'd say he's sort of due a favourable run now, if anybody is.
Forest Mechanics Devon Vale 2 is the penultimate game to discuss. A first half double from Ryan Park was the difference between the sides. Well, actually, if you read the post-match comments from the managers, I think the difference was perhaps the fact that one team was ruthless at both ends at the park and one maybe wasn't.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Both boxes, the big difference. I mean, Devon Vale, we were maybe critical of their defending last week against Fraserburgh, but they've done well this week, kept a clean sheet, and I think that's 3 clean sheets in 4 or 3 clean sheets in 5, something like that now for them, which is, you know, good going. It's maybe been the top end of the park where they've had more issues this season, but you know, quite a sort of a new strike force, if you will. Ryan Park and Jack Mitchell, both 2 promising young players, but they seem to cause Forest problems, and they've ultimately done the damage. Jack Mitchell set both of them up, I believe. Ryan Park finished him, and first away league win this season for Devon Vale, so you know, good day all round, credit to them. And it ends a sort of I think it was a 6-game winless run they'd been on Forest, they get into good areas. Craig McKenzie hit a post. They've played well, or played reasonably well certainly again, but just that thing, both boxes, they'll feel they could do better with the goals they've conceded, and then at the other end they haven't taken their chances, and that's usually a recipe for not getting too much out of a game.
Turriff United 3, Wick Academy 1 then to round things off. Ewan Clark with a goal for Turriff, and then a double from Rhys McEwen, I believe it was, before Ross Gunn got a late consolation for Wick. Turriff up to 7th in the table.
They're going well.
I believe. When you talk about Locos and momentum, like Turriff are a team that, like, every week I feel like they've picked up more points.
They've won 4 of their last 5 now, and the defeat in that was to Buckeye when they were 1-0 up for a long time and then lost 3 in the last quarter of an hour. So, just ticking along really nicely is the main thing you could say. And I mean, Rhys McEwen, somebody in his Highland League career to date, been more used to seeing as a wide player. He's been playing through the middle with Ewan Clark the last few weeks, and it seems to be quite a useful combination in terms of, I mean, Rhys's kind of pace and his energy and sort of willingness to run in behind seems to be quite a good foil for Ewan Clark at the moment, and they're getting their rewards. I mean, Wick, on the other hand, in the midst of a difficult run, I think it's 7 without a win, stretching back to the 4th of November, and doesn't get any easier for them because you look at their next 3 games, it's Brechin, Fraserburgh and Brora. So if do well to pick up points from that run. I mean, there's no question, I think Wick, they do still have good players, but it's just consistency and maybe who's available week to week as well that's hampering them a wee bit.
I think Turriff are your best bet for best of the rest at this point, and by that I'm saying the 7th place position, because I look at, in no order, Brechin, Buckeye, Brora, Fraserburgh, Banks of D and Formartine being your top 6. However,
I think Nairn would have something to say about that as well, because they're sitting 6th
I was
at the moment.
trying to work out there whether you include Nairn as being like outside the best of the rest race because you consider them to be in that top pack.
Yeah. We'll see.
It'll be interesting to see. There's good teams there, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a look at the Breedon Highland League standings as they are now.